Hurrah! Good. All righty. So I'm going to see if I can just put that into, oh, that'll be fine. Here we go, slideshow. Alrighty, so the pelvic floor is the beginning of our whole core system. And when we go into the beginning years of our perimenopause, we start to, first of all, lose our ovarian progesterone. So our progesterone levels start to drop. So we start to have anovulatory cycles. And the progesterone tends to help calm the system. So when we start to feel anxiety because we haven't got as much progesterone in our systems, that can cause tension in the body. And for women, a lot of that tension will show up in the pelvic floor function. So I'll get onto that in a minute, but I just wanted to flag that quite often early on in perimenopause. So when we're well away from actual menopause itself, which tends to be around 51 or 52, when we're often in our early 40s, we can have this dropping of the progesterone levels. So we lose about 70% between 35 and 50 years old. So quite steadily dropping down here. And the anxiety, the muscle tension that we can experience doesn't just show up around our neck and shoulders. It absolutely shows up in the pelvic region as well. So then we head into our mid to late 40s, and that's when the ovaries start to really stop producing that estrogen. So most of this talk is going to be focused around the effects of the estrogen. So when we start to lose our estrogen levels, it doesn't just drop off relatively smoothly like progesterone does. It does this big crazy surge and then drop, surge and then drop, as our ovaries are going, one more baby, one more baby. And we find that the differential between those surges of estrogen and the dropping progesterone, those are the moments where we have most of our symptoms. And then we get to the stage closer to 50 and in the years just after 50, where you can see I've done my little sad face, because that's when the estrogen's dropping right away. And this can have quite a significant effect. So I've just scattered here some of the main issues that women are affected with once we start to lose our progesterone and our estrogen, and to an extent testosterone as well, but I'm going to be focusing mainly on progesterone and estrogen. So you can see there's lots of different things here. In fact, there's about now 35 well-known ones, nearly 50 not quite so well-known ones. I've highlighted here in pink some of the issues that directly affect our pelvic floor function. And as I said in the first slide, the pelvic floor is the beginning of our whole core system. And some of the main things that we might experience once we get into the stage of our lives, and which are sadly, I want to say, so not uncommon at all, and not necessarily fixed with just doing more Kegels. So pelvic organ prolapse, I've got here over here, the pelvic organ prolapse. 50% of women over 50 will be experiencing a change of where their pelvic organs, their bladder, the bowel, or the uterus sits in the pelvic bowl. So we can find that the organs, once we start to get a laxity in this area, the organs start to drop lower down. We can affect this by doing a lot of exercise, intra-abdominal pressure, pushing down on the pelvic floor, and the heaviness of these organs can also lead into a protrusion right out of the vagina as well. So it's a lot more common in women who have during birth experienced any kind of severe tearing or an episiotomy, a forceps delivery, if you had twins or a very large baby, then the or a very extended second phase of pushing. All of these mean that once you get into midlife and we start to lose strengthening estrogen, you're more likely to experience prolapse. So I'm going to be talking a bit more about that in a minute. Urinary incontinence. So We've got stress incontinence, which is more of when there's laxity to the muscles. So if you sneeze, if you laugh, belly laugh, if you cough a lot, or if you go to jump, to lunge, playing tennis, you go and lunge. If you're running after a while on hard surfaces in particular, running down a hill in particular, 1 in 3 women are experiencing leaking with urine during this extra intra-abdominal pressure downwards. And it could be just a dribble, but I always say it's a red flag. If it's just a dribble, don't ignore it. And some women will experience full bladder loss. So the stress incontinence. We also have things like tension issues. Tension issues could be pain with sex. Yeah, so when 1 in 5 women experience pain with intercourse, it can lead to the muscles feeling heavy and uncomfortable. There's a constant feeling of discomfort, difficulty with arousal, difficulty with even like a pelvic exam. So anything where the area just doesn't feel elasticy, it doesn't feel like it can open up and move well. The tension issues can lead to bladder urgency and urge incontinence. So that's more of a tension problem generally than a laxity problem. Also, bladder irritation. I'm going to talk a little bit about nutrition, but bladder irritation, not just from tension, but often also because irritants that we're consuming. So we can also have urethral irritation, more frequent UTIs, or just the sensation of UTIs, and pain with urination. We can also find that there's an increase in fecal incontinence. So actually 1 in 5 women over 40 experience a loss of stool. So it could be smearing, it could be a bit more than that. It could be just not being able to stop yourself farting. It can happen with a really strong urge to go. It can happen after a bowel movement or with activity. It can happen with changing positions. Another big issue that comes along with the anxiety, comes along with the tension, is constipation. And constipation is also very linked in with IBS, so worsening mobility, gut mobility issues. So when we start to lose our progesterone, often women will find that IBS gets worse. Same time, anxiety and things can get worse. That's like the loss of progesterone. We then also get that loss of estrogen, and things can get really quite congested and tense and heavy in the whole of the pelvic area. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong, but there's so much that we can be doing. And sometimes it just means little tweaks to lifestyle to massively improve how we feel and how we function. So I'm just going to flip on. So I'm Linda Stephens, as you all know, hopefully. And the reason I am so passionate about women's health in general, it started with pelvic health, is because of my own journey. Hang on, I'm just gonna, here we go. So I've got 3 children. I had an emergency cesarean, and then I had a VBAC 14 months later successfully. So that was very sort of healing for me. But then at 40, I found myself pregnant again with my 3rd baby, Olivia, and went into labor at 24 weeks with her. So luckily, with drugs, under general anesthetic, I had my cervix all stitched up. I was then put on strict bed rest with my pelvis up and my heart down, and we managed to save Olivia. And I was on bed rest for 4 months. And as anyone who knows me knows, motion is lotion. And not moving meant that all the muscles around my pelvis, so all the stability muscles that hold our pelvic floor intact, etc., everything had atrophied. And one day I went to stand up quickly, and because I could get up to go to the loo, and had one quick shower a week, and that was it. So I hadn't been moving. I stood up quickly. Things had sort of got out of place, and my pubic bone completely split. And it was awful, and I couldn't walk. I birthed with that condition. I should have had a cesarean. That was a silly thing to do, but anyway, afterwards I couldn't walk, and so I had already become a yoga teacher by this stage. I had already started focusing on women's health because of my my passion for mothers and everything that we go through. So I then started to deep dive into biomechanics, and I used my physiotherapy and my yoga tools, and then looked into the biomechanics of things, and came up with my own healing program, which I vigilantly followed. And I was before long walking without pain, then finally running without pain, and eventually jumping back on trampolines with everything intact. So it's possible, even when you have had extreme situations like mine. But what I learned along the way is very much part of what I want to teach you today. It's the foundations of my yoga birthing method that I teach mums and yoga mums. So both of those I created, and also more recently created for us midlife women, the Women's Wellbeing Pathway 1, 2, 3. So these are yoga based and biomechanics based classes. I've split them into 3 areas that are designed to help with all of these symptoms that we experience once we start to lose our progesterone and our estrogen. So one of the classes is all about calming the nervous system. So it's all about the adrenal calming, to try and get our adrenals to produce the progesterone and the estrogen that they can do and will do for the rest of our lives if we look after them. That class is all about the tension release, the unwinding of tension patterns. So it's so foundational for everything else, because once we go into that cortisol adrenaline production zone, we stop being able to sleep properly. Insomnia gets a lot worse. We don't heal well. The tension that we have around our jaw and our neck always ends up being mirrored in the pelvic area. So that class is super, super important as a foundation. This talk is mainly about what I teach in my posture and pelvic-core restore class. So this part is all focused around improving the biomechanics of the body so that we can improve leaks, we can improve prolapse symptoms, and sometimes the degree of prolapse. I look at posture and our breathing. And then once we've got those foundations kind of set, then we can add in the muscle and the bone strengthening, the cross patterning for the brain, the balance work, and all the rest of it. That's when we age proof ourselves. That's when we go into that future proofing, I call it. But not if we're leaking, not if we're so stressed we can't sleep. We've got to get those foundations right first. So this talk, I'm going to be focusing on these 5 things which I cover in this class, and which, if you are okay, at the end of this talk, I'm going to do an offer on an 8-week course where I really dive into all of these lessons, which I'm starting in a couple of weeks' time. And I would love for you guys to come with me on that journey if you're able to. But if you can't, don't worry, there's still going to be an awful lot in this talk which will give you some stepping stones to start your journey back to being really well and fully functioning. So let me just come off screen share so I can have a little chat to you. Hang on a second, Sammy. How do I do stop screen share? Here we go. Can you guys see me now full? Okay, so that was the first time that worked. I'm really pleased that it did. Thanks, Singer. She's like, she did it. Alrighty. So I've looked at 5 areas that I think are key, and I'm going to add a 6th, which is nutrition. I'm going to just pop a little bit of nutrition talk at the end of that. But The 5 things are supplementing the estrogen that we are losing. Yeah, so that's the first thing I'm going to talk about. The second thing, so it's spots. The second thing is our posture, because I tell you what, ladies, the more kyphosis you have, rolling shoulders, head poked forward, pelvis tucking under. Honestly, you can do 200 Kegels a day. If you are in this position, you're just going to make things worse, and you're not going to be able to breathe properly. You will have anxiety problems. You are not going to be able to sleep properly. You will end up wetting your pants all the time. So posture is super important. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about posture. I'm going to teach you about optimal breathing, because if we're just chest breathing, which does seem to come along with this shoulder roll forward stress situation, if you're chest breathing all the time, again, we're not going to be able to access good pelvic floor function. And I'll tell you a bit about that in a minute. Hang on. As I'm sure you understand, my brain, which is not great at the best of times when I am trying to remember words, etc. Then I'm going to be talking about actual strengthening. Yeah, so ways we can strengthen muscle fibers, which is when we have got hypotonia issues. So when we have laxity issues, when the muscle fibers are lengthened, stretched, but not able to actually contract. And then I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight into what we can do when there's too much tension. Yeah, so just like my bicep, if I'm constantly switched on and I'm trying to then do a Kegel, there's nowhere for my muscle to strengthen. So we need both length and we need strength. So this is called hypertonia. And actually, these days, I think hypertonia, so tension issues, are behind, I would say, a high percentage. I mean, I don't know the actual stats, but a very high percentage of women have too much tension. And this is absolutely what is causing the key in the door syndrome, or making key in the door syndrome, making elimination problems, constipation, discomfort, frequent UTI sensations, etc., a lot worse. So does that all make sense so far? Can you give me a little? Yes. Alrighty. Supplementation. Now, I'm not going to go in here to all of the differences in HRT. I do in the course, but not at the moment. Whether you choose to take or use systemic HRT, these days it's body identical, so it's the same molecular structure as what our ovaries produce, the same molecular structure as the progesterone, not progestogen, that's a synthetic thing, progesterone and estrogen. So I'm not going to talk about this systemic and different ways you can take HRT and how you ask for it, etc. I do that in the course. But what I do want to touch on is how supplementing very low dosed estriol estrogen, so it's a type of estrogen, around the pelvic area, so in the vulva and the vagina. So the vagina is the, what you have sex inside, and the vulva is the external skin area, and the sphincters, so your urethra and your anus sphincter. And if there's any issues around the perineum, which if you had an episiotomy, you will still have a bit of scar tissue there or a severe tear. So adding external estrogen to this area can be night and day, makes such a profound difference to women's lives. So we can get a cream, and the brand that is most commonly available in the UK, I don't know in the US what it's called. In the UK, it's called Ovaston cream. That's the brand that the NHS have as the cheapest brand on the NHS. There is another brand which is even lower dose called estriol cream. So basically what is in the tube is on the box. And the cream form of this very low dose estrogen can be put over the vulva, not loads, you don't need loads. It can be put around the sphincter muscles to help plump them up. It can be put inside the vagina to help plump up the vaginal walls. Because once we start to lose the estrogen in that later part of our 40s, and absolutely on, you know, in the year of menopause and the few years afterwards when our hormones are settling lower and they settle into that lower state, by putting back the estrogen into this area, it will help to replump up the muscle fibers. So just like I would say, you know, if you, once you start to get saggy skin around here and around here, once we start to lose, or this gets all saggy, if you had a really good eye cream and it just sort of takes away some of the lines and the wrinkles, sort of just lifts in, it's kind of what's happening down there when you use the estrogen cream. It's just re-elasticizing, plumping up the muscle fibers so that you don't get the dehydration externally, especially even if you're not dehydrated inside, externally, that is what's causing the discomfort, the itchiness, often the pain. The inside the vagina, when we're young, their walls are concertinaed like that so that they can stretch and open. You can have a baby. But once we start to age, we lose that estrogen, they become very thin and stretched out. And so it's a lot easier for the bowel, for the uterus, for the bladder to drop into, to be pushed into those walls. So by supplementing with estrogen, you can help maintain the walls. You can stop prolapse from getting worse as long as you do the other things as well. And you can just keep everything feeling so much better. And you can stop like episiotomy scars and things. From, sometimes when we age, the episiotomy scars can start to literally feel like they're coming apart and can be very uncomfortable. So re-elasticizing the area with a cream can be profound. The cream also does affect the bladder. So because the bladder is literally behind the vaginal wall, the detrusor muscles of the bladder, so the external muscles of a bladder are called detrusor muscles. And and the whole bladder is full of these estrogen receptors. So when we start to lose estrogen, the receptors become way more agitated. Yeah, so the bladder starts to spasm a lot more easily, making us feel like we need the loo, even if there's not much urine in there. We don't actually need the loo. We can get that awful sensation of, oh my God, I need the loo. So by supplementing back that estrogen, it can just calm those detrusor muscles down. It can help what's the word? So our urethra, yeah, the hose of the urethra is supposed to be quite pliable. But once we start to lose the estrogen, again, it's very estrogen rich, it becomes quite stiff. And so we without that pliability, it can be harder to get a good stream, to eliminate properly. We're much more likely to get a UTI, or at least the feeling of a UTI. So again, supplementing with estrogen can be massively helpful just to make that a bit more flexible again. It also comes, this cream comes in a tiny little pill, which is condensed, and it's called Vagifem here in the UK. Vagifem is actually available over the counter as well, but you can just get it on the NHS. And that just sits up in the vagina and it slowly dissipates. So that's a great option. And you can also get a ring, which just slowly lets that estrogen out. And that can just be fitted normally at your GP. So these are great options. The reason I talk more about the cream is that because so many women actually find that suddenly just wearing knickers can be really uncomfortable, you know, or the whole area, you know, for sex, etc. The whole area just feels too, I'm going to say brittle, but dry. So by using this external cream, you just become a lot more youthful. You stay a lot more youthful. The vulva and vaginal estrogen doesn't go into the bloodstream. So that's why I call it, I want to separate it from other HRT. It's not systemic. It doesn't go into the bloodstream. It's not going to make your bones strong. It's not going to help your heart health. It's not going to sort out your headaches or anything else like that at all. It's just going to look after the pelvic area. And a lot of women use both. A lot of women need to use both. And some women don't want to use HRT, systemic HRT, but decide they do want to supplement the vulva and vaginal area with just the low dose estrogen. So you've got to be quite careful when you talk to your GP that if this is all you want to talk about, you're just talking about vulva and vaginal estrogen. You're not talking about the topical estrogen that goes through your skin and into your system. Yeah, so they're separate. This is very, very low dose. Even if you have had cancer, you've recovered from cancer, it is now seen as being something that is safe for women to use. So that's something that I suggest, that especially, if you've got any problems, if your aunt or your mum or older relatives have got issues, or you're starting to talk to your girlfriends, at least tell them to get onto that, because that's really important. The other thing is just use lubrication as well. Like once we stop, it's like our hands get dry. You wash your hands these days and they get dry, and you need to use a moisturizer afterwards. Yes, it's a great product. It's got an oil-based version and also a water-based version. Lots of other products, but don't, for God's sake, use anything that's got perfumes and all the rest of it. You want to use something that's very organic, natural. Yes, it comes from kiwi fruit extract, so it's a good product. I just say to women, if just externally using a little bit of sunflower oil, organic sunflower oil on the skin, it's very moisturizing, it's full of vitamin E, it's very healthy for the skin. So I wouldn't use that internally, but externally that can be really super helpful as well. So don't be thinking like, oh, just it really makes such a massive difference. And also if you're in a relationship, it can make it a lot easier on the sex front. So that's that little bit. That's number one. Anyone got any quick questions on that? If you haven't, I will answer questions at the end. In the US, Optimised appears to be called estriol. It isn't commercially sold, so it needs a prescription. Yes. So I would think that the estriol that's in the US is the same as the estriol here in the UK. Optimised is 0.1% estradiol, and estriol. It's estriol. Estriol cream is 0.01%, so it's really, really weak. But it's like homeopathic, but it's good. It still works. So yes, interesting that it's probably just the estriol brand that you've got in the US. So Lisa's just said, do you suggest using the cream daily or several times a week? You need to talk to your prescriber about that. Generally, what people do is start with 2 weeks every single day, just to sort of get the levels of re-elasticizing, that's not a word, elasticity back into your pelvic area. And then you use it a couple of times a week just as a maintenance dose. And you've got to keep using it forever. Like as long as you want to have sex, as long as you want to wear knickers and all the rest of it, you need to keep using it. So it's not like you can get to old age and then just go, well, I'm done, because your issues will come back. So yeah, it's something that you start using it and you carry on using it. Cool. All righty. I'm going to go on to number 2. Number 2 is posture. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. And hang on, I'm just gonna, here we go. Because when we have, hang on, I'm mucking around my slides here. When we have bad posture, we are going to get back pain. We're not going to be able to breathe properly. We're likely to get issues with pain around the tailbone. We're likely to get issues with our pelvic floor function. Our core isn't going to work properly. So I don't know if you guys can see me, but yes, you can. Okay, cool. So many of us, because we're sitting all the time, have a posteriorly rotated pelvis. We lose the lumbar curve. It goes flat here. We get a mum's bum where our muscles of our bum are atrophied. So everything starts pulled back like that. And then because we're all on our phones, we tend to also have shoulders that are slightly rolled forward, and even a tiny bit rolled forward, even slightly forward of the midline is a problem, because this also makes our head turn, go forward. Often we'll lift the head as well, yeah, so we're not literally looking at the ground, we'll lift the head, but we get this chronic, I mean, obviously I'm not exaggerating here, but we get this chronic tension issue going on in our neck and our shoulders. The head is like a Christmas turkey. It's 8 to 10 pounds of weight. So all of that weight forward in the midline on our neck and shoulders is terrible. Also, here, I can't breathe properly. My diaphragm, which is my breathing mechanism, can't function properly, can't drop down, and I can't get movement through the intercostal muscles between my ribs if I'm all scrunched here. And we know that the way we breathe when we stand directly affects our brain's interpretation of how safe we are in the world. So if we are like this all the time, our brain is saying, I'm in defense mode, I'm in danger. So our brain is much more likely to be pushing out our stress, our cortisol, our adrenaline. We need to be able to run quickly away from danger. We're much more reactive to life. Yeah, so this has such a profound impact on, I'm going to be talking about our pelvic floor, but on everything. Also, if I'm like this, or even if I chuck my shoulders back and lift my rib cage like this, if I still got my pelvis under, all of this is so destabilized. I can't actually use my core. Instead, my poor lower back is going to take the brunt of things. Potentially my psoas muscles are going to be working instead of my core. And this can lead to chronic back problems, acute back problems as well. Our core muscles not working, hip pain, joint degeneration, so on and so forth. So I'm going to get you guys to stand for a moment, if you can, and follow me in getting into aligned posture. Also, if you've got a chair nearby, I'm going to get you to grab your chair. So we're going to use that. And you'll need I've got a blanket here. Your jacket will do. If you've got a jacket, that will do. Otherwise, like a hand towel or something as well. All right, so give yourself a jiggle for a moment to just jiggle up and down. So drop your shoulders up and down. I just want to loosen up the fascia. Yeah, give everything a jiggle, 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 jiggle. I do a lot of release work around here in my classes because, you know, we need to loosen up. It's like a big cobweb underneath the skin surface, like a big body glove. And when we have tightness, we just get energy blocks all through the body. So give yourself a jiggle. All righty. So I call this getting tall against the wall. I do this against the wall. If you don't have a bit of wall, don't worry, just listen to my instructions. If you have got a bit of wall, go to your bit of wall for this. All right, so a couple of points before we get into getting tall against the wall. You do not want to lock your knees. Yeah, so whenever you're standing, we want to have our legs just very slightly bent. If I lock my knees, my pelvis will go forward, even a little bit. So slight bend of the knees. Second thing, weight should be about 60% in your heels. So I'm putting my weight in my toes now. If you guys do the same, put your weight in your toes. You tend to need to pull your pelvis forward as well. And we tend to do that. You see your shoulders are forward, head is slightly lifted. Being in my toes means that I put a lot of pressure through my knees, my hip joints. Also, I'm constantly in this go stage. I'm reactive to life again. A lot of women who are in their toes have IBS issues and anxiety issues. So put your weight in your heels. Lift your toes, spread them, and then place them back down on the ground. Now your bum needs to be behind you. It's called your behind for a reason. So we do not want to have pubic bone lifted and tail tucking under and sucking the tummy to make ourselves look skinny. So all of that, those days are over. You need to stop sucking and tucking because you tend to then go rolly and pokey as well. We want to untuck the tail and let your lower belly go. Just let it go. So imagine you have got attached to your sacrum at the back of your pelvis a big tail like a kangaroo. Yeah, a big heavy tail drops back and down behind you. So your tail is behind you. Now, we are going to be looking to draw the base of the rib cage down and back so that the base of the rib cage here sits on top of the pelvis. They are in one line. Yeah, so when we're there in one line, we have a straighter back. If I lift my rib cage like that and they flare out, you can see that this part of my back pushes in and the bottom of my rib cage is in front of my pelvis now. So I'm destabilizing my core. So we want to have base of the rib cage back, just below the bra strap back, so this feels straight. Yeah, so that's what we're going to be doing. We'll do it against the wall in a second. The next thing is we want to have the shoulders in the back of the socket. So you just lift and roll one shoulder at a time and let them sit at the back of the sockets so the breastbone is open. And then last thing, we don't want this, we don't want this like head. We want to feel as if the ridge of the head, the back of the head is lifted. I call this kitten neck. So imagine a mother cat is pictured up by the scruff of the neck, has lifted you up, chin is drawn back slightly on an angle downwards. So you're not forward, you just lift it through the back of your head and then let go. Imagine you've got a string from the crown of your head lifting you straight up to the ceiling. So we have this length through the vertebra. So this is what we're looking for. And I find it's easiest to get into that alignment by doing this exercise against the wall. Okay, so feet are hip width apart. Front of your hip bones here needs to run down into the middle toes. Spread your feet, soften your knees, so no locking the knees. Have your bottom here, the sacrum, going into the wall. So you need about 2 inches behind your heels for space for your bottom. If your kangaroo tail, if there was a hole here, your kangaroo tail would be going straight back into the hole. Imagine there's somebody on the other side of the wall and they're just pulling your kangaroo tail back. Soften the knees, push down and out your feet. Most of your weight is in your heels. Now, see if you can rest into the wall, lift one shoulder, slide it down, palm is forward, back of the hand into the wall. Same thing on the other side, lift and roll down, palm forward, back of the hand into the wall. Now press your forearms into the wall. Good. Draw your chin back, so the mother cat sensation. See if you can get the ridge of your head into the wall or close to the wall. Right, now down to your feet, down and push slightly out with your feet. Soften the knees, press your tail back into the wall. Now see if you can spread the area just above your bra strap into the wall. That just draws the rib cage down, so it's not flaring. Don't let your pelvis pop off. And see if you can press back with your forearms and the back of your hands. Gently press back with your head. Now you need to breathe down here. So try not to breathe where your shoulders go up. Try and just send your breath down into the lower lobes of your lungs. Good. Now just come off the wall. Give everything a little roll. So you unstick it all. And then place your head back on top of your neck. And you want to feel as if you've got a big heavy crown on your head and a big heavy ermine cloak over your shoulders. And if you're standing in alignment, it should feel like you could just stand here all day and you're not going to get lower back pain. So, and you should also feel as if there's a little bit of activation in your deep transverse abdominal muscles and the extensor muscles here in the back. So it should feel like this is slightly switched on. So when we first come into aligned posture, quite often people go, oh, I can really feel my back. That's because they haven't used those muscles, often for decades. When you see little children go down to deep squat and back up again and play, and they have a lovely straight back and then a bum, like a J. so they don't have all those like that. Okay, so that is aligned posture. When we are in aligned posture, our diaphragm, our breathing diaphragm, and our pelvic diaphragm, they work synergistically like they're supposed to work. So this is the top of our core. This is the bottom of our core. Our tail, the tailbone, and where the tailbone attaches onto our pelvic floor at the back, that is the beginning of our whole core system. The front muscles right against the spine are deep transverse abdominal muscles, so the front of the core, and the multifidi muscles, which are extensor muscles, they are part of our core as well. So this whole area is our core, and they are supported, these muscles, fundamentally by our glutes, and then we've got some deep muscles that help support the core. Our adductors, these inner thighs, they run straight into the core. So all of these muscles, these external muscles, support good core function. But if we are standing on this, then our diaphragm's not working, and the bottom of the core isn't working. So when we're in alignment, every time, when I'm standing here like this, every time I breathe in, the diaphragm drops to pull the breath into my lungs. It drops down, and the intercostal muscles pull out, so our ribs go out to the side. Every time I breathe in, my pelvic diaphragm drops and spreads. So it's like a trampoline. So every time I breathe in, I get this opening of the pelvic floor, this receiving, this lengthening of the muscles. And then every time I breathe out, the breath pours out of me, there is a slight vacuum of the pelvic floor muscles. So if you imagine jellyfish sitting on top of each other in the ocean, with every single breath, if we are breathing well and we are aligned, we should get this sumping action through our pelvic floor muscles. We get this length and contraction, just subtle, but it keeps us functional. Because back when we were evolving from in cavewoman times, we weren't doing Pilates classes and yoga classes. We were squatting to eliminate, we were climbing, we were moving, we were using all of these stabilizing muscles. So the other posture thing I wanted to show you was when you're sitting, because all of these chairs are designed to get us to the chiropractor. They're designed, look at this. And this is what we put our children in straight away. We put them in car seats, and straight away we're putting them in this C shape, which is terrible. So for you to get good alignment and to be able to actually use your pelvic floor muscles and to do your Kegels at the lights, you don't want to be here doing your Kegels. It'll make things worse. You'll end up with tension issues. You'll end up with urgency getting worse and all the rest of it. You want to make sure that when you're sitting, you have your diaphragm on top of your pelvic diaphragm so that you can actually recruit the muscles properly. They can go from recruiting to lengthening. So this is a little trick. Stick your bottom in the back of your seat. So do this now with me. Stick your bottom right to the back. Spread your sitting bones, so the bones that you can feel underneath your bum muscles, spread them so they feel quite wide. And then do the shoulder thing that we did against the wall. So lift and drop one shoulder, lift and drop the other shoulder, so they sit in the back of the sockets. Draw your chin back and then lift up through the crown of the head and feel like we're lifting up through the back of your head. Now, if you've got a towel or a blanket, you want to put that just where your bra strap is, so that your shoulder blades rest on your prop there. Now, I can drive, I can sit at my computer, I can eat my dinner, I can watch TV, I could put my legs up on the sofa and sit cross-legged but have my back straight. So this can be super comfortable. If you're doing this with me now, you might feel that all of this is slightly recruited. Well, we want that. We want our core muscles to be like a corset around our spine. That's a functional, well-aligned body. Now, with my diaphragm sitting on top of my pelvic diaphragm and with my sitting bones wide, so my pelvic floor muscles are lengthened, now I can do a recruitment of the pelvic floor muscles, and it's a functional recruitment. So I'll go over the recruitment a bit more in a second, but essentially in this position, you're wanting to feel like you're stopping yourself passing wind, and feel like you're stopping yourself weeing. And then also, if you're getting both of those contractions, front and back, draw them into the midline and imagine that with your vagina, you're picking up a tissue from the tissue box and then releasing it back down again. So we get these actions through all parts of the pelvic floor. I'm going to go over that in a bit more detail in a second. But I just want you to experience this posture. And whilst I've got my chair here, and this is under the umbrella of posture as well, when you are on the loo, if we are here, sitting on the loo, then our tubes are tucking underneath us. So the way our organs sit is the bladder sits on an angle like that against the pubic bone in the lower belly. Yeah, so if I'm sitting here and I've got my bladders here, my uterus snugs into the bladder on an angle as well. And then my bowel should sit just against the lumbar spine here and then against the uterus. So they're all on an angle like so. Now, the tubes going down are on a bit of an angle as well. So if I am in a squatting position, which is how we were designed to eliminate, if you think when we're eliminating, when we are out in the savannah, we're eliminating like this. So that's a squat. That's how our tubes were designed to evacuate babies, poo, and wee. So if we put our feet on a lifted surface, and this is called a squatty potty, but you could even use the bin that comes in most toilets, just lifting your feet up. So you can see now I'm in a squatting position. And so my bladder is here, my bowel is here, and my tubes are going straight down. My pelvic floor is nice and opened and relaxed. So it's infinitely easier to get a good evacuation in this position than if I'm here, where my tubes are actually going slightly down that way, because now you can see they're like that. So it's a lot harder to eliminate, and you're much more likely to strain on the toilet. And we know that straining on the loo is actually the #1 cause of prolapse organs. So I'm going to talk about constipation in a moment. We don't want to be constipated, and we do not want to be straining on the loo. So one of the things we can do easily is get ourselves into a squatting position for elimination. I go into a lot of detail in the course about bladder and bowel health, bladder training. If the detrusor muscles are spasming all the time, that's a whole bladder training thing. So I'll go into that, and also tools with how to make sure that you eliminate properly, so that you're not then standing up and doing a bit of extra weight. So all of that is a lot more detailed, but just as a basis thing, as a starting point, making sure that you are in a squatting position for elimination is super important, and just starting to bring awareness to your posture, really important. So the next thing, and before I can really go on to strengthening, I need to teach you about breathing, because let me just have a little sip of water. Breathing, as I said, is foundational, well, to keeping us alive, but it's foundational to everything. And when we just chest breathe, when we breathe and every now and again we bring our shoulders up, we are reducing our capacity for vitality. Down here in the lower lobes of the back of our lungs, this is where we have most of our lung capacity. So if we're just chest breathing up here, we're missing out on all of the vitality that we'll get just from breathing properly. But also fundamentally, because of our pelvic floor, as I said, the diaphragm and the pelvic diaphragm, they work together. They are part of the core. The pelvic floor is the beginning of the core. So if you're cutting out the whole of your breathing mechanism, your poor pelvic floor muscles are probably going to be like this, tight, dehydrated. The sphincter muscles won't be able to close properly. You're probably going to be feeling everything is congested, much more likely to get that feeling of frequent UTIs. The bladder detrusor muscles are likely to be constantly being in that spasm state. Sex, just everything needs lengthening and lubricating to operate properly. So getting ourselves into good alignment to start off with. So you want to make sure that your head is sitting on top of your shoulders, your chest is open, your shoulders not there, chest is open, and the base of the rib cage is not flaring, is just sitting. So the base of the rib cage here is sitting on top of your hip bones, slightly elongated through the spine here, so we're not kind of nice and long. Now the breathing mechanism, if you draw your chin back and just breathe in and out of your nostrils to start off with, see if you can do that, and imagine in your mind's eye that as the breath comes down into the bottom of your lungs, you're filling up a big vase like this, one of those big vases of water. So you're filling the bottom of the vase first, and we want the breath to feel like it's dropping down and then spreading out. So down is 1, out is 2, and this is the fundamental bit. So we're stretching the rib cage out to the side, and then the vase starts to fill up to the top. So then we get the breath coming into the clavicle area. And then imagine you just pouring the water out of the vase. So as we exhale, we want to feel like it's drawing in slightly and the breath is pouring out of us. So see if you maybe use your hands. I like to also imagine like an accordion, you know, when you're breathing properly diaphragmatically, there's a slight drag from the back of your throat and you're breathing down and out. Feels like this is stretching out, and then good. So with our chin drawn slightly back, when we get that mother cat lifting sensation, it creates a bit of constriction in the goiter, the back of our throat. That makes our diaphragm have to work harder to pull, like a bellows, you know, that you do, you get your fire working with. The diaphragm has to pull the breath down. So we tone the lungs, we increase the lung capacity relatively quickly. So slow the breath down and then press the breath out. See if you can create a slight Darth Vader sound to your breath, very soft. I call it the ocean breath. So it sort of sounds like the sea going onto the beach and then pulling off the beach again. Good. Now, there are 2 things that I do with the breath. I've made it relative. I mean, there's so many things we can do with the breath, but I've sort of, for this class, I focus on 2 aspects. One, I call the release breath. Yeah, so it's the same breath in. You want to always feel like you're breathing in past your ears into the back of your head. But as on the release breath, you want to loosen your lower jaw and you just let the breath pour out of you like that water pouring out of a jug. So it's a slow release, either out of your nostrils or out of your mouth. And that's the breath you want to be using when you're eliminating. So when you're going to the toilet, trying your poo, you're relaxing your jaw. It's a slow breath out. And this is the breath you'd use if you're birthing your baby. We are opening the muscles, everything's relaxing. So in your mind, as you're doing that breath, we call it the apana breath, the downward breath. Feel like everything's spreading and opening and releasing. Yeah, so there's an opening breath out. It's an exhalation, but it's a slow, stretched out exhalation. Everything is opening. Great for calming the nervous system as well. The longer we can make our exhalation, the more we drop into, it's called the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's that calming, rest and digest state. It's a state you want to be in if you're birthing a baby, if you're trying to do a poo, you know, if you're digesting your food, you want to be in that relaxed state. If you are trying to lengthen, tighten muscles, you want to be slow, long breath out. So that's the calming relaxation breath. If we've got a lot of tension in our pelvic floor and postural stuff, the first thing we want to be focusing on is how to lengthen the breath, lengthen the exhalations. So an average person will breathe 14 to 16 breaths a minute. When we are consciously going into that parasympathetic, relaxed breath state, we want to slow and stretch each exhalation so that we only take 5 or 6 breaths in a whole minute. So that's what we're aiming for, slowing and stretching the exhalation. So that's the relaxation breath. And there's lots of different ways to enhance that. The Brahmahari, the Buzzy Bee breath. We can do Nadi Shodhana, alternate nostril breathing. We can do different counts to help us extend our ability with the exhalation. But the breath that I use for strengthening the pelvic floor, which I'm going to get into next, I call the activation exhalation. So that is just a breath out through pursed lips as if you're blowing out of a straw. That is. And I teach all sorts of variations which make it harder, like a or so there's lots of things you can do, and we can do it just through the nostrils, but I start with the pursed lips as if you're breathing out of a straw for ease, basically. So chin is in. Now what we do when we go quite quickly is we're keeping the diaphragm high. So if any of you in your birthing, you might remember being fully dilated or nearly fully dilated and wanting to push, but the midwife has done a check and she's seen there's a bit of a cervical lip. Yeah, so the cervix hasn't quite opened fully yet. And so she's saying, don't push yet, don't push yet. Do little puffy breaths out and you'll go. So if you do that now, go and try and push down on your pelvic floor at the same time. It's impossible to do that because your diaphragm is pushing the breath out of you. Remember, diaphragm and pelvic diaphragm, they're linked, the top and the bottom of the cord. So by going, I'm keeping my diaphragm high and my pelvic floor is high. So when I'm doing toning work, if I'm going to pick up something heavy and I want my diaphragm to be high and my pelvic floor to be high, to be activated, then I use this breath. So I'm going to get you guys to grab your blanket and sit on it like this. Yeah. So you've got some, or if you've got a sofa there, sit on the edge of your sofa. Or if you've got a bolster and you're on the ground, I've got a bolster here, sit on your bolster. Which I'm going to spend a couple on to do that. Looks crazy, doesn't it? So sit on something, and then I'm going to get you to rock forward and back like that, so you can feel the pubic bone at the front and the tailbone at the back. And then just give yourself a little rock from side to side, or maybe you use your hands so you can feel your bones under your bum. Just locate them. So in your brain, you can go, okay, front, back, side, side. It's like a diamond shape. Our pelvic floor muscles are like a diamond shape. Where our tailbone attaches at the back, that's the beginning of the whole pelvic floor and core structure. So if you are habitually tucking your tail under, and it might be because of previous sexual trauma, from birth trauma, from simply being in a state of fright and flight, emotional trauma. Yeah. If your tailbone is tucking habitually, you can extrapolate from what I'm saying here, the impact on your ability to breathe, for any of this area to function properly. The impact on your life is so profound. So for this, I'm going to get you now to rock slightly forward, so your pubic bone is dropping, rib cage is drawing down and back, so you're not flaring your ribs, you're drawing your rib cage back. And if you had a big tail, the tail would be out behind you. Yeah, it's not going to be tucking, it's going to be sitting out. My posture here. So if I was on a horse, my tail would be sitting out on top of the horse's bum. There you go. That's a nice little bit of visual for you. All right, so we've got our pelvic floor muscles nice and opened up here. I'm sitting on the toilet and I've got my squatty potty and I'm in a squat. I'm in this position. Yeah, so pubic bone slightly down. Now, when we do our activation breath, I'm going to get you to also see if you can activate your pelvic floor muscles at the same time. So this is the strengthening. Now, I'm just going to caveat this because many women, and I reckon way more women than the NHS are aware of at the moment, are pretty much cut off from the tummy button downwards. And so it'll take a little while to be able to first lengthen the muscles and then recruit them. So if I'm giving you some cues now and you're like, there's nothing happening, I can't feel anything. It's not you. It's not you. It's life, and you can get it back to a large degree. Okay, it's just going to take some self-love and some. When I say self-love, I mean care and focus. So first of all, lean slightly forward. Let's focus on let's focus on the back of the pelvic floor, because we have 70% of our pelvic floor muscles at the back and just about 30% at the front. So most women find that the fast twitch muscles of the front around the urethra, they get damaged or weakened faster than the ones at the back, unless you've had a stage 4 tear or an episiotomy, or bad tearing into the anus, and then we need to focus on that more. So slightly forward. The sensation initially is just like you're stopping yourself passing wind. Yeah, so you want to stop yourself passing wind, and then imagine you have a straw in your anus and you're sucking a big thick smoothie up through the straw, which is a very weird visualization, so bear with me. And then you want to release back down as if you could fart right now. Okay, so relax your anal muscles and then squeeze them. You're in a lift. There's a lot of people in the lift with you. You need to fart, but you can't because you'll stink it out. So you need to lift up these muscles. And then everybody leaves the lift and you can fart, okay? So again, I can see Sam just going, Linda, you're losing the plot. And drawing up and then releasing back down. Now, listen, many of us use our bum muscles instead of our actual pelvic floor muscles. So if you can feel your bum wanting to squeeze or your inner thighs squeezing inwards, then you know you've got some release work to do in order to be able to just actually recruit the pelvic floor muscles first. These muscles all feed into the pelvic floor. They stabilize the pelvic floor, but we want to let the pelvic floor muscles shine in their own right. So slightly forward here, and then activating through the anus, exhaling, drawing in and up, and then relaxing. I'm going to come back to this one in a second. Let's just jump to the front, around the urethra. So the sensation, so the urethra is like a hose, a pliable hose, and I call this closing the hose. So imagine like a branch slider is closing, or the hose is being pinched. You're closing the hose here. The sensation is like you're stopping yourself weeing midstream. Close the hose, and then you want to lift the hose upwards. I call this zipping up your tight high-waisted jeans, and then you unzip and you release the hose. You relax to the point that you could wee. Yeah, that relaxed. So you close the hose, you zip upwards, and you release. You close the hose, you lift upwards, and you release. This is called fast twitch activations, where it's about a second activation and a little lift, and then about a second to release. So we want to work on fast twitch, especially around the front, but also slow twitch. Slow twitch is just slightly different muscle fibers. So same action, close the hose, zip upwards. Now see if you can keep lifting upwards. Go. We've got the zip, and we're just zipping up here. And then unzip the jeans, relax, 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 relax. So slow twitch muscles, about 7 or 8 seconds to close and zip up, 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 and then go. Don't know how many seconds that was, but 7. And then slowly relax and imagine the hose is opened. So front, back. Now try to do both of those at the same time, and notice as you stop yourself weeing and you stop yourself passing wind, you hopefully, since you're going from the back and the front into the midline, hopefully you can feel around the vagina slightly lift, and then relax and imagine your sitting bones are spreading wide. You can try just focusing on the vaginal entrance, yeah? So if you had a tampon in and the tampon had dropped down too low, imagine you're with those vaginal muscles, you're just trying to pull the tampon back up again. Pull the tampon back up again. Now let's try doing this with our breath out. And then hold the tampon and lift it. Or you could imagine you've got that smoothie straw going up the vagina towards your cervix, and you're trying to suck the straw by blowing out. And then relax all the way down to what I call basement level, and that's where you want to feel the whole of your pelvic floor sort of spreading across your prop. So that's very basically how to activate front, back, in the center, everything at the same time, and then also release. The most important part is actually the release, because too many women, especially when they're in that tuck position, are going squeeze, 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 squeeze. And their muscles are doing this, 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 this. And then when they actually do need to stop themselves going for a wee, they put their key in the door and they're like, oh, I need the loo. Well, there's nowhere to go. That poor sphincter muscle, there's no way it can close. So we need to be able to relax the muscles, lengthen the muscles in order to get a good contraction. And everything, once you start to get that full range of your muscle fibers back again, everything gets better. Everything gets better. So that was very briefly the strengthening side. I'm going to show you a bit more strengthening, but also one of the easiest ways to release. So if you've got a bolster, come on down to the ground with me. I'm just going to have a quick check of my notes to see if I have missed anything. I literally teach this over 8 weeks. There's so much to learn, but this is very surface level. Okay, so as I said before, bum muscles and inner thigh muscles often want to jump in and do the work instead of your pelvic floor muscles. So I know the woman who I'll try and teach them how to do a Kegel. And they will say, and I'll say, but don't use your bum muscles. And they'll say, well, how can I not? I have to squeeze my bum muscles in order to get that activation. So if that's you, then I suggest you do this instead. So I'm going to show you this before I do the release. You come onto your tummy. Now, I don't have big boobs, so I can come straight up to my tummy. If you've got big boobs, you might need to fold up a blanket or two and put them underneath your boobs and on your belly, just so you don't get squashed on the ground. But this is the position we're wanting to come into. It's called crocodile, and we have our toes and our heels out. So I'm going to get you just to swish like that with your feet, and then drop your heels out and your toes go in. Now in this position, see if you can squeeze your bum muscles. It's impossible. So the reason I'm doing this position is because you can't squeeze your bum. I mean, you can push your bum down, but you can't just squeeze your bum. You rest your forehead on the back of your hands like that. So your shoulders are down, your chin is in. Remember, that's really important. Chin is in, back of the neck is long. So in this position, I'm just going to sit up and teach you this. Sitting up, or you guys are on your tummies. So your feet are in, bum is deactivated. In this position, the pubic bone and the lower belly, because they're pushing onto the ground, it's easier to get that proprioception, so that sense of what's happening in your body, because you're pushing onto the ground. So in this position, try doing that. Close the hose. So breathe out, close the hose, and then try and zip up your tight high-waisted jeans, and then relax those, unzip the jeans and relax the urethra. So close the hose, zip upwards, and then release and go down. Close the hose up and then release down. So it looks like, here we are. Hopefully you can still hear me. I know my audio is not great on my computer, so hopefully you can hear me still. I close the hose, I zip upwards. If you're doing it correctly, you should, even if your tummy doesn't actually lift off the ground, you get a sensation of your lower belly trying to lift upwards towards your rib cage, and then you let your belly soften to the ground and relax around that urethra area, whole of your pubic bone area. So zipping up, zipping down, zipping up, zipping down. This can be just a helpful exercise to those of you who are finding that the external sphincter muscle isn't closing as well as it could do. So you'd want to get the external estrogen cream and then do those exercises. Once you've got it, when you don't have gravity, once you've got that activation well without gravity and with that proprioception of the ground, then you want to do them when you're sitting up or standing. So next thing, last thing, relaxation. But also great if you've got prolapse is, so I'm going to lie on my back here and put my pelvis up. I've got a bolster here, but you could use a couple of firm pillows. So when we're lying on our back, the pelvis is up. The pelvic organs, so the bladder, the bowel, the uterus, they're all dropping away from my pelvic floor now. So a pelvic floor that is tense and tight, if it's constantly having to hold the organs up, it's less likely to relax because it's in that position. But we're taking all the weight off the pelvis. So just this is great. Putting your legs up the wall as well. So at night, doing a bit of viparita-karani, where you put your legs up the wall or over the edge of the bed and a bolster under your pelvis. All of these positions are fantastic for allowing these muscles to relax. Now just notice, because we're in a slight inversion here, when you breathe out, it's a bit easier to make your exhalation longer. So it's easier when we're in a slight inversion to go into that extended exhalation, parasympathetic nervous system, anti-anxiety, anti-stress, tension releasing state. So in this position, if you just take your knees wide, I always take a moment to massage my feet whenever I'm in this position. Knees wide, you start to feel the adductor muscles stretching. And if you take your feet up towards the ceiling, this is the most ungainly pose in yoga. This is called baby pose. So we're in an upside down squat. So for all the benefits of this, but none of the weight of the organs going down. So I can stretch the inner thighs, I can stretch the glutes, I can help reposition everything. But this is a really nice position to spend time in, just stretching, releasing tense pelvic muscles, taking the organs off the pelvic floor, and practicing the long, stretched out exhalation. You want to try and very consciously unwind your lower jaw away from your upper jaw. So try and get your face looking really gormless, relaxed, lower jaw dropping as you extend exhalations, because the jaw and the pelvic floor area are fascially connected. So when we're tight around the jaw and we're constricted in our breathing, our pelvic floor muscles are also going to be at the other end of that tightness. So in this position, relax the pelvic floor, relax the breathing, relax the jaw. Good. That's a really lovely way to spend 5 minutes at the end of the day, especially if you put your legs up the wall first. If you've got any vulvar varicosities, so any or veins in the legs as well, really nice way just to drain those, make them not so heavy. In that position, with the pelvis raised, either like I was just showing then, so either the pelvis raised and the rectum and the bowel is dropping into the back of my pelvis. That's a good position if you have got rectocele, to practice those activations through the anus, because you're helping to suck the rectocele back upwards with gravity. And if we're looking at a cytocele, so the anterior prolapse, where you could do a similar thing. I teach this in a lot of detail in the course as well, where we give ourselves a bit of height and we're going forward. So now my bladder is dropping back into the correct position on pubic bone and lower belly. And I can do some exercises in this position where I combine gravity, that sucking up, and we add a bit of a Kegel with a breath. And that's really effective at reducing the symptoms of and improving. If you've got a stage 2 or 1 cytocele, then that can be maintained and improved. So using these positions to consciously relax muscles, lengthen them, and you can, with other intention, strengthen in certain positions, is just incredibly effective. It really is. It's very, very effective. And I wanted to open up your awareness of the fact that there is a lot of things that the ancient yoga tools of that have been gifted to us that are really useful in midlife for us, that I think are almost like they've been made for midlife women. So using the full Uddiyana breath, which has been created into a whole hyperpressives sequence, but knowing how to use the full Uddiyana breath, if you've got prolapse, that can be an absolute game changer. Using breath work to calm the nervous system down, to actually get mastery over your own nervous system, is a total game changer. Just getting into good alignment, breathing diaphragmatically, total game changer. It really is. So I wanted to touch on, let me just flip us back to the share screen. Wanted to touch on nutrition as well, because constipation is the number one, unfortunately, the number one driver of incontinence. So we've gone over supplementing. I'll go back. Supplementing, so re-elasticizing the pelvic floor muscle fibers with topical estrogen, either in a tiny little pill, a little pessary, or in the cream, which I personally prefer, or you can get a ring fitted, which lasts about 3 months or so. And this estrogen is just localized around the pelvic area. Please, as a caveat, don't read the inserts. So the inserts haven't changed in about 25, 30 years. They're the same inserts that were used for systemic HRT that was synthetic. So the old style progestogens and estrogen, the same insert is still used today, even in this stuff. So talk to your GP about that. Do start to use organic, clean moisturizers, lubricants like Yes, they're really helpful. Posture, if your posture is not great, honestly, number one thing, sort out your posture and sort out your breathing. Before you do those things, everything else, no matter what work you do, you'll undo it again. There's 0 point starting running classes, going to HIIT classes and all the rest of it, if you are just going to be ruining your joints and doing more damage than good in the long run, because your breathing is terrible and your posture's all over the place. So get those things sorted out. The strengthening, and pressure protection. So I showed you how to strengthen. One thing I didn't show you, which I must show you, is the Knack. So the Knack is simply a way to protect your pelvic floor from too much pressure downwards when you don't have good enough strength anymore to support and cushion the intra-abdominal pressure of your organs going downwards with gravity. Yeah. So if you're lifting up something heavy, your organs and things are all being pushed downwards with gravity. What we don't want to do is hold our breath to brace. We want to be able to use our breath and the Knack to counteract pressure downwards. And once we get good at the Knack, then we can use it for, if we're about to sneeze, like I'm doing now, it's just a quick activation of the pelvic floor as that intra-abdominal pressure of a sneeze or a cough goes down. And then number 5 is that stress reduction, not just lengthening muscles. It's got to be the breath, and it's actually got to be the calming of the mind as well, which is why I have that other whole class, which is all about that. Because you know, if you're going to stretch muscles but you're tense, you're just going to pull muscles, and our body won't open up, it won't lengthen properly. It'll still be like that, and you'll be pulling muscles that don't want to be pulled, and you will end up doing yourself some damage. I will go back to the Knack. Nutrition, just quickly. I've got a whole module on nutrition because it is so important. What we put into our bodies obviously becomes what our cells are made of. But once we hit midlife, we've got to reevaluate the diet. Can't get away with just eating pasta and toast anymore at all. We really have to focus on dietary fiber and lots of hydration. So dietary fiber, we want to get at least 30 different plants, and that can be herbs and seeds and things, etc. as well, into our diet every week. So variety is important to keep the gut biome healthy. Once we start to lose estrogen, it really affects our gut biome, and we can very quickly get constipated. So we want to increase our fiber way more than you might imagine. I mean, you want to be having vegetables with eggs for breakfast. You want to be having lots of veggies, stir-fry veggies and things for lunch. I always say to people, when you've got your plate of food, eat the vegetables first, then eat the protein. And then if you're still full, then eat your carbohydrates, and try to make your carbohydrates quality carbohydrates. You know, your quinoa, etc. That stuff is ideal. Your sweet potato, etc. Eat your veggies first. That's if you take one thing away from today, eat your veggies first. And make the dietary fiber as varied as possible to increase your gut biome. We know that caffeine in particular, and also alcohol, are major bladder irritants and bowel irritants, but for many women it's the bladder that's a real problem. So just experiment with reducing, having a decaf coffee instead of a second caffeinated coffee. Always drinking a lot of water when you have caffeine. So you want to be able to reduce the irritant level by having a bit more water. And if possible, try resting the gut at night. So finishing eating at, say, 7:30 or 8 o'clock or whatever, and then don't snack if you can until later on in the morning. So you've let your gut rest overnight. Now, a caveat to that is that, especially if you are quite revved, etc., and you are waking up 2 or 3 in the morning because of these cortisol spikes, having a bit of banana or peanut butter, bit of turkey, something like that just before you go to bed can ease out the blood sugar dropping and mean that you don't wake up in the nighttime. So obviously sleep's super important. But I just want to say, get onto the fiber. The other thing is we need good fats in midlife. The good fats, so from salmon, from chia seeds, from avocados, from mackerel, from all your oily fish, all of that stuff. Olive oil, best thing is cold pressed olive oil. All of the good fats, the omega-3 good fats, directly feed our ability to produce estrogen and progesterone through our adrenals, through our brain, through our fat cells. So once we start to lose our ovarian estrogen, that regular ovarian estrogen and ovarian progesterone, we need to be really mindful of how the other cells of the bodies that can produce those hormones are able to have the precursor building blocks. And the precursor building blocks come from pregnenolone, and pregnenolone is produced from cholesterol, and cholesterol comes from those good fats. So we need to give our body the good fats through our diet. So I've just put up here a couple of quotes from people who have done my 8-week course, have gone a bit deeper with me, and have had really life-changing experiences. And it's lovely when I talk to people and they say, "It changed my life," being able to not worry about, you know, not being able to go for a run or laughing too hard and things. But I will say, you've got to do the work. You know, you've actually got to decide that it is time for you to do the work on yourself. There's no point signing up for anything and then not actually doing the work or being so busy with everything else. Saying that, I do always say the courses that I do are yours for life. So if you get busy with life, you can always go back and revisit things. I know how life sometimes does derail us. So I wanted to say today, ladies, I've got my course starting in 2 weeks' time. This time I've got lovely Sam who's working with me, and she's going to be doing the course alongside those of you who decide to do it, and creating an accountability team. So she's going to be making sure that everybody is following along. Any questions that they have, I'm able to answer them, making sure that people are able to come to the Friday class, or if not, that they've scheduled a time to catch up with the class. So if you're interested in that, please take a little photograph of the QR code here. And if you're interested, use the PCR 100 off coupon code so that it makes it just $297 for you guys today. The course, I'm very proud of this course. I've put in, you know, 18 years now of working in women's health. A lot of this is my methodology that I've created over the years, and I know works because, you know, like I said, having birthed, not being able to walk afterwards, and then having healed myself, then hitting perimenopause, not understanding really the impact of that, losing the estrogen. I double bounced my eldest kids on the trampoline one day, and as I went up, my bladder stayed down, and I caused myself a cytosol instantly. And although now I manage that, and there's nothing I can't do now, there was a period where it really affected me, and it affected me mentally as well as physically. And so what I've put in the course is all the stuff that I do to manage this, the stuff that I teach women when I do one-to-ones to help them get mastery over their bodies again. And like I said, you know, there's nothing I can't do now. And, you know, intimate life is better than it's ever been. And I actually feel stronger now at 52, nearly 53 than I did when I was 25. And so it is entirely possible. You just need knowledge. You just need to know what to do and when to do it, and then start building it in so that it just becomes part of your life. I'm not somebody who spends huge amounts of time at all. I do 5 or 10 minutes a day of maintenance work. I go for walks out in nature. It's pretty much it. Every now and again I do a bit more, but you know, I don't go to the gym for hours or anything like that. No. So it's just, it literally is, once you've got your foundations there, it's just maintenance. It's just maintenance. All right, so I'll just leave that up there for a moment. Anyone who wants to take a photograph, please do. And then I'm going to take any questions you've got. And I think I'm just going to send you guys a little video of me doing, Sam, will you take a note of this? Of the Knack, yeah? So the Knack is just, you know, if you are lifting, if I say goodbye to you today and I don't see you again, just so that you know how to, if you're going to the gym, you are lifting weights, or if you're lifting something heavy, or if you're just lifting the laundry basket from one spot to another, even if you're going from sit to stand. A lot of women find they leak when they go from sit to stand. So the Knack is something that we should all know, we should all use. We need to teach our grandmas and our aunts and all the rest of it. And once you progress from basic work with the Knack, that's when you start to use it in a situation, like I said before, if you're about to sneeze, about to cough, if you're laughing. Cool. So we'll send a little video, yeah, Sam? Cool. All right, my lovely ladies, I'm going to stop sharing my screen there and come back to you.
Lisa's put a good couple of questions in the chat as well for you, Linda.
Let's have a little squiz. All right, no worries. So the course is, I send out modules, e-booklet modules. So I've created these e-booklet modules where I have created little videos, how-to videos through each module. And then there's a full-length class at the end of the module, which kind of encapsulates everything you need to know for that module. And then you can also come, it's an optional thing, but you can also come to my Friday class, which starts at 9:30, so that you can check in. I will be teaching that week things that relate to the module. I'll be teaching other things as well, but certain things that relate to the module. So we've got modules that focus on strengthening, other modules that focus on all the release work, other modules that focus on bladder and bowel training, and so on and so forth. So there's you get 6 modules. You can keep those forever. So I'm not somebody who says, right, after 6 months you don't get access anymore. You can keep them forever. But you also get that access to me on a Friday. I've put in an extra class at the end as well as a bonus, where there'll be a bit more of a session like this. We're answering questions and going over key things. And this time, for this one, starting mid-September, going through till December, Sam's going to be doing it alongside everybody else and running a WhatsApp group for questions, for accountability, for a little bit of motivation and stuff. So that's an extra added bonus as well. Yes, please do share with anybody else. That would be amazing. Thank you. Any other questions, ladies, about anything I went over today, about the key things: supplementation, posture, your breathing, essential strengthening, and the ability to relax and release those muscle fibers? No? All good? Oh, can't hear you.
Amanda.
Hi, Amanda. Oh, can't hear you, darling. How do you push the audio? See the little microphone?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, you showed at the beginning a graph of the estrogen and progesterone dropping. Is that something that you will be forwarding to us? It would be really handy, I thought.
I can do that if you like. I can forward you that. I mean, it's not a scientific, it's just something that I made. So
no, that's fine. Well, I
it's
probably got it past it now myself, but I thought it was just quite handy to see, roughly what's going on.
yeah. So very roughly, so between about 35 years, so way younger than most people think, we start to have anovulatory cycles. So that's why they say once you're over 35, you are a geriatric mum. Yeah, when you're pregnant, it's because you're producing less progesterone. Because every time we have a ovulation, that's when we produce our progesterone. Progesterone obviously keeps us pregnant, keeps us able to hold that pregnancy. So if we are older and we are not producing as much progesterone, we're less likely to A, get pregnant in the first place, and B, keep the pregnancy. So as we age, we have less and less ovulatory cycles. We might still be bleeding. Our period might not have changed at all that we've noticed, but we might not actually have an ovulation. So from 35 to about 50, just before actual menopause, the year of menopause, we lose roughly 70% of the progesterone that our ovaries are producing. So quite a lot. And then in the last year or two, it drops off. Yeah. And then it's not until we reach about 45, 46, 47 that our ovaries start reducing our levels of estrogen. So early on in perimenopause, most women's estrogen is quite high, but their progesterone is really quite low in comparison. And the anxiety, headaches, tension issues, a lot of that itchy skin, that's low progesterone in relationship to estrogen. And as we age, as we get closer to 50 and beyond 50, that's when our estrogen's dropping off. So between 35 and 50, it's only dropping off by about 35%. And it doesn't do a slow slide down like progesterone. It goes like that. As I said before, the ovaries go, one more baby, one more baby, one more baby. And we have big surges, so that you have more estrogen you did when you're in your early 20s, and then it plummets and then goes back up and plummets. And then slowly, as you hit closer to 50, it then just drops off a cliff. And that's why often 48, 49, 50, suddenly women really suffer with key in the door syndrome, or they used to be able to run 5K no problems. Suddenly it's like, oh my god, I'm leaking. There's suddenly prolapse, or maybe they didn't even know they had a bit of prolapse, but suddenly the symptoms of prolapse become really prevalent because the estrogen rich muscle fibers have become weakened, and so prolapse is becoming worse. And what I find is that a lot of women around this age, that's when we're getting estronome, so it's the type of estrogen in our fat cells around the tummy. And so people go, oh, I need to do more cardio. That's what I need to do to lose the weight. So they'll go, right, I'm going to go running, or I'm going to go and do lots of swimming, or I'm going to do whatever it is. I'm going to go on the treadmill for an hour at a time. And unfortunately, from our point of view, from pelvic floor point of view, pelvic floor muscles are probably not going to sustain that level of intra-abdominal pressure when you haven't done the work yet to get your foundation strong. If your breathing's bad, if your posture's bad, etc., you're likely to make it with all that extra intra-abdominal pressure, you're likely to make prolapse issues worse, or even cause prolapse, which is, believe you me, incredibly disappointing when you do it to yourself. But also what we do is we rev the adrenals. We rob the adrenals of their potential to make more progesterone and estrogen. Instead, they're so exhausted, they're pushing out more cortisol and adrenaline, and we get these insulin spikes, and we just put on more weight, essentially.
And also it affects us mentally with those things going on, so it's kind of a vicious circle, isn't it, really? Because when our adrenals play up and those hormones get affected, and then we react because we either feel depressed or whatever, we can't sleep. So it's kind of a whole big roller coaster.
And which is, why it's brilliant that you're working with you on a holistic in a holistic way, because we can't, when we're such holistic beings, you know, and the medical model, which sort of says, okay, we're going to address your headaches over here, and we're going to address your IBS over here, and we're going to address your pelvic floor over here, and we're going to address, you know, your back pain over here, and doesn't see that everything is interconnected, is simply falling apart. People are realizing now that we are such holistic beings. Very interesting. If we can't join a class in one of the weeks, yes. So all the recordings you get as well, 100%. Not many, to be honest. Fridays at 9:30, I have found it quite difficult for a lot of people who are working in particular. So please don't worry, you get all the recordings. And if there's anything in particular you want to know, you know, if you've done a module and you're like, oh, then you just send me a quick email or a quick voice note, and I will make sure that I address it in the class, and then you get a recording as well. So yeah, I get all of that. So it's very, very value laden, you know, it really is. It's the cheapest way that you can work pretty much with me, get as much knowledge that I have worked so hard over a long time to get all this. And but it you know, like probably a lot of you, I really need the world to change and have more of a feminine influence. And like it deeply hurts me when I hear about women who have to leave work situations or relationships are falling apart, and it's to do with things that can be addressed through knowledge and through the kind of stuff that I teach. So I want to make sure that women aren't, you know, having to go into nursing homes because of incontinence, when it can be, when it can very often be addressed and be improved. Or women who rely on pads, you know, they're 90% plastic. It takes 500 years for one pad to disintegrate. And it's not a way forward if we care about the planet and things, and when there's so much we can be doing, and there's no way to live, it really isn't. So relying on tenor is not a solution. It really isn't, not when there's so much that can be done. And I'm the first person who will, you know, if surgery is an absolute need, then we do the work you've got to do before the surgery, so that you recover as best as you possibly can, and so that you're not likely to have more surgery down the track. That's the thing. So you know, I'm all for take the drugs if you need the drugs, you know, do the surgeries if you need the surgeries, absolutely, but we've got to do the work first. Yeah, yes, you're right. Yeah, and the especially if they're pads with it's a smelly stuff yeah, not good for our pH levels at all of the whole vulvar and vaginal area. No. Ladies, you know, I just wanted to say thank you for taking some time out today to join me. And if nothing else, if you get something out of this, please tell your friends about me. And if you are able to join me for the course, then I look forward to seeing a lot more of you, and for guiding you. And if you think maybe you've got a friend who could benefit, then please do pass this on. And if you want to send them the recording of this, then they might also be able to use that £100 off as well. Spread the love. Any other bits and pieces? I'm starting to get my pelvic floor healed. Good. Well, I'm so glad. And yeah, even if it's one thing, even if it's just the nutrition or just any one thing that you take away, then that's good, because, you know, like I said before when we started, when we know better, we do better. And when we put that knowledge into practice, that's when we start to feel and function better. And it's totally possible. I am the, you know, it's possible. It is possible. I've experienced healing, and lots and lots of women that I work with have experienced quite profound healing as well. All right, ladies, we've gone well and truly over. So if there's no other questions, I'm going to love and leave you, and you will get this recording. And thank you so much for joining me. Take care.